You think modern farming is advanced? Let me take you back to 1,000 years ago, when medieval Europe quietly cracked the code on sustainable agriculture, long before sustainability became a buzzword. Back then, farmers didn't have machines or chemicals, just pure observation, patience, and ingenuity. The results? Systems so efficient that today's scientists are still trying to copy them. It all started with a deceptively simple idea: the three-field rotation. Before this, farmers would plant the same crop every season until the soil gave up. But someone realized that if you split your land into 3 parts, one for grains, one for legumes, and one left fallow, the earth could actually heal itself. Each year, the fields rotated, the soil stayed rich, yields doubled. It was the medieval version of renewable energy, powered by sunlight, rain, and good sense. Then came the heavy plow, a piece of engineering genius that changed everything north of the Alps. Lighter Mediterranean plows skidded across the dense clay of northern Europe, barely scratching the surface. The heavy plow dug deep, turning and aerating the earth, slicing through thick sod like a blade through wet bread. With iron shares, wheels, and a moldboard that flipped the soil, suddenly vast tracts of previously useless land became fertile. You can thank this machine for fueling Europe's population boom, but you can't farm without water. And medieval engineers were masters of it. They built channels that captured rainfall, diverted streams into irrigation ditches, and powered entire villages with water wheels. Some mills ground grain, others sawed timber or crushed olives. Water didn't just quench fields, it powered an economy. From Normandy to Tuscany, rivers became veins of innovation, their turning wheels whispering the rhythm of progress. Of course, even the best plowed field is useless without nutrients. Medieval farmers understood that long before fertilizers came in shiny plastic bags. They used what they had: manure from their animals, ashes from their hearths, composted scraps from the table. Every bit of waste became future growth. You could smell the cycle of life in every furrow: smoke, soil, and promise. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked, feeding families, villages, and entire kingdoms. And they didn't farm alone. The open field system bound communities together. Land was divided into narrow strips, scattered across large shared fields, so that everyone got a mix of good and poor soil. Families worked side by side, plowing, planting, and harvesting together. Cooperation wasn't optional, it was survival. Fences were rare, disputes settled by talk and trust. The harvest belonged to everyone, and the land remembered every hand that touched it. But they weren't just smart about community, they were smart about crops. Companion planting was standard practice. Beans climbing up stalks of barley, cabbages growing beside onions that kept pests away. Every pairing served a purpose. Some enriched the soil with nitrogen, others repelled insects or shaded the roots beneath. These farmers were early ecologists, turning small plots into self-balancing ecosystems. Animals were part of that system too. Livestock rotated through the stubble after harvest, trampling, grazing, and fertilizing as they went. Sheep clipped grass short, cows left behind nutrients, pigs rooted out pests. Nothing went to waste, not even movement. This was regenerative agriculture centuries before the term existed. A perfectly choreographed partnership between beasts and soil. Their understanding of the natural world didn't stop there. They read the weather like scripture. The tilt of the moon, the color of dawn, the migration of birds, every sign told them something about the season to come. They kept almanacs and calendars, tracking frost dates and harvest moons. A halo around the sun meant rain. A red sky at night, good weather for morning work. Their science was instinct sharpened by generations of observation. Then came the monks, the quiet custodians of agriculture. Inside stone-walled monasteries, they tended gardens that were both spiritual and scientific. They saved seeds in clay jars, testing which strains survived drought or frost. They crossbred plants for flavor and resilience, writing down every discovery in careful Latin. When famine hit or war burned the fields, it was these monks who replanted civilization one seed at a time. And when nature struck back with pests, blight, or locusts, the farmers didn't reach for chemicals. They reached for timing, ingenuity, and balance. Birds became allies, eating the insects that threatened the crop. They sowed trap plants around the edges of fields to lure pests away. Some burned chaff to sterilize the soil. Others rotated crops, so that pests never found a home twice in a row. It was nature's own pesticide, guided by rhythm instead of poison. So while modern agriculture talks about innovation, medieval farmers were already living it quietly, humbly, in the language of earth and weather, Their systems fed continents without destroying the land, built communities without dividing them, and left behind lessons we're only now rediscovering. Long before science gave it a name, they mastered the art of balance, the simple, eternal truth that if you care for the land, it will care for you. You want modern? Let's talk medieval. 1,000 years ago, farmers built systems that didn't burn out the land or the people. No diesel, no chemicals, just pattern, patience, and precision. The shocker, their playbook still works. Watch how they stacked simple ideas into a powerhouse of food and resilience. Start with the 3-field rotation. Picture the village dividing its acres into thirds. One sown with grain, one with legumes, one resting under sun and rain. Next year, they switch, then switch again. The soil breathes, recovers, and returns the favor with fuller sheaves. It's the original reset button. No buzzwords, just results. Now roll in the heavy plow. Northern clay used to fight every blade. Then iron chairs, wheels, and a curved moldboard show up and flip whole slabs of earth, like a baker turning dough. Air slips into the soil, roots find depth, and land once written off turns generous. That single tool drags a new map out of the ground. Water is muscle, and they harness it. Ditches guide rainfall, leets sip from rivers, mill races spin wheels that grind, saw, and press from dawn to dusk. A stream becomes a village engine, steady, tireless, clean. Grain flows in, flour pours out, and the river keeps time like a drumbeat you can live by. Fertility doesn't come from a bag, it comes from the yard. Manure scraped from stalls, ash sifted from hearths, peelings and straw piled to steam through winter. Back to the fields it goes, dark and crumbly, feeding the next harvest. Nothing is trash. Everything is tomorrow's bread. No one farms alone. The open field system lays out long, narrow strips across shared acres so every family holds a fair mix. Plowing teams move together, sowing lines run straight, and harvest rises in a common rhythm. Disputes settled at the edge of the furrow. Cooperation isn't idealism, it's survival with a handshake. Plants don't grow as strangers, either. Companions pair up like old friends, vining beans climbing sturdy stalks, pungent alliums crouching beside brassicas roots, mining deep while herbs shade the surface. One repels pests, one feeds soil, one breaks hardpan. It's choreography in leaves and stems, small plots behaving like small forests. Then bring in the animals. After the sides, sheep drift through stubble, cows drop slow, rich gifts, pigs tilt with their noses, where plows can't reach. Hooves press seed, manure seals it, and the ground wakes up again. Fields feed beasts, beasts feed fields. The loop clicks shut with a satisfying snap. Weather becomes a language. A ring around the moon, a sudden wind, the scent before rain, all logged in memory and marked on rough calendars. Sowing waits for soil warmth, pruning for waning moon, hay for that window after a red dusk. No forecasts, yet remarkably few surprises, and in cloisters quiet hands save the future. Monks sort seed on wooden tables, labeled jars, and note which barley shrugged off frost, or which pea filled a pot best. They trade, test, and write it down. When disaster passes, those little leather-bound lines become the spark that relights a landscape. Pests show up. Panic does not. Birds are courted to patrol the rows. Early sowings dodge peak hatch. Trap crops ring the field like decoys. Ash dusts the soil. Herbs confuse the nose. Rotations break life cycles before they start. The fight isn't louder. It's smarter. And the harvest arrives anyway. That's the medieval secret. Cycles stacked on cycles, each one strengthening the next. Feed the soil. Listen to water, enlist plants and animals, trust the seasons, save your best seed, and outthink the pests. It's elegant, stubbornly practical, and still undefeated at the one thing that matters, making the earth want to feed you again. Think about it. A millennium before climate talk and carbon credits, medieval farmers had already built a zero-waste system that practically ran itself. The beauty was in how everything connected. One decision echoed through the entire landscape. The rotation fed the soil fed the crops fed the animals, and the animals fed it all right back. It wasn't magic. It was observation turned into muscle memory. Picture dawn over the open fields. Mist hangs low. Oxen snort white clouds as their yokes creak forward, pulling the heavy plow through damp earth. The iron edge glints, cutting deep into soil that hasn't been touched in a year. Behind it, black ribbons of life roll upward, rich and steaming. A farmer wipes his brow, nodding to the rhythm of hooves. He doesn't need a scientist to tell him what's happening. He can smell fertility in the air. Not far away, the water wheels start turning. Streams channel into carved races, trickling beneath wooden flumes. The wheel spins, creaking like an old song. Grain pours from sacks into the millstone, and flour dust fills the light like smoke. Every rotation is work transformed into food. The village hums to the steady pulse of moving water, quiet power that never tires. Never demands oil or coal. Back in the fields, the compost heaps steam under the cold air. Layers of straw, manure, and ash rise like pastry. Last year's waste becoming this year's strength. A boy tosses a shovel of black earth onto the pile, grinning at the steam that curls up like breath from a giant. His grandmother taught him that soil must eat, too. Every crumb of rot is a promise that spring will not betray them. At midday, the sound of wooden wheels and laughter echoes across the common. The open field farmers work side by side, their strips blending into one vast patchwork. Nobody owns a perfect square, just long, narrow ribbons that keep neighbors dependent on each other. A man adjusts his harness. A woman scatters seed. Children chase crows between the furrows. It's not competition, it's choreography. Everyone's survival braided into one long field. As evening comes, the air thickens with the smell of herbs. Companion plants do their silent work. Marigold, onion, and bean sharing the same soil, like a secret alliance. Bees drift lazily between blossoms, carrying invisible contracts from one species to the next. You can almost feel the logic. If you feed variety, variety feeds you back. Night falls. The livestock wander in hooves, thudding softly over spent fields. Sheep graze what's left of the stalks, leaving behind small dark dots of promise. Cows chew and sigh in the cooling dark. The farmer watches from his gate, listening to the quiet churn of digestion, the sound of tomorrow's soil being made one mouthful at a time. When the wind shifts, he looks to the sky. Clouds speak their own language. A ring around the moon warns of weather. A warm breeze at dusk whispers of rain. He notes it the way his father did, and his father before him. Not on paper, but in the back of his mind, where survival stories live. The year's rhythm is set by light and shadow, not by clocks. And deep in a monastery's garden, a monk kneels over a row of herbs. His robe brushes the soil as he tends to tiny shoots. Basil, lentil, barley, flax. He measures, compares, records. Each jar on his shelf holds the legacy of a season. Seeds saved, tested, passed down. Outside those stone walls, empires rise and fall. Inside, the work continues. Quiet, methodical, immortal. Insects buzz where torches flicker, but instead of poison, the farmers fight back with patience. They hang strips of linen smeared with honey to trap flies. They time their planting to dodge hatching cycles. They invite swallows to nest in the rafters, their sharp wings slicing the twilight as they hunt midges over the fields. Nature fights itself, and the farmers simply guide the battle. This was the secret of their endurance, a world designed not for dominance, but dialogue. Every part of nature had a voice, and the farmer learned to listen. The soil told him when it hungered. The sky told him when to sow. The animals told him when the season had turned. It wasn't primitive. It was partnership. And somehow, 1,000 years later, we're still trying to relearn what they never forgot. Winter creeps in, soft but certain. Frost gathers on the furrows, turning the fields silver under a sky pale as pewter. The earth rests, but the work doesn't stop. Farmers patch tools by the hearth, mend harnesses, sharpen blades. Smoke curls through thatched roofs while stew simmers carrots. Leeks, barley from the last rotation, flavored with a pinch of dried lovage from the herb rack. Outside, snow muffles every sound, except the slow rhythm of the mill wheel that never quite sleeps. Inside the monastery, candles flicker against shelves of earthen jars. A monk tilts one carefully, examining seeds no bigger than dust, rye, flax, beans, each labeled with neat Latin strokes. He listens to the wind press against the stones and whispers a prayer. Not for miracles, but for weather kind enough to let these seeds see spring. Knowledge lives here, preserved grain by grain. By February, the first thaw begins. Meltwater runs down into ditches and overflows into channels the villagers dug generations ago. The water wheels quicken, creaking back to full life. It's the sound of the year beginning again, not with fireworks, but with motion, the same turning that's powered everything for centuries. Ducks gather where the ice breaks. The smell of wet soil returns, that sharp metallic scent that says, time to prepare. When the first plow cuts through thawed ground, the oxen strain, muscles rolling beneath shaggy winter coats. The air fills with crows and shouts, laughter cutting through cold wind. Compost from winter piles spreads dark and steaming, streaking the earth in rich lines. Each strip of land receives its share, fairness carried out in wheelbarrows and wooden forks. The soil, newly black and breathing, looks alive again. By late spring, the rhythm builds. Bean vines climb, wheat waves, and herbs bloom between rows. A quiet orchestra of color and scent. You can hear the hum of bees, the chatter of children chasing dogs through footpaths, the splash of buckets pulled from wells. The whole village moves like a single living thing. Animals wander the edges, chickens scratching through stubble, pigs rooting for beetles, sheep grazing the fallow field. The shepherd leans on his crook, watching clouds roll in from the west. He knows by their shape what's coming. A brief shower, enough to dampen the dust and cool the air. No one calls it science, yet it's every bit as precise. When summer heat arrives, the fields shimmer gold and green. You can almost feel time slowing. Women gather herbs at dawn, while the dew still clings. Men lift scythes and swing through barley. The sound a low whispering song that carries for miles. Each swing cuts through months of labor. Each bundled sheaf, a promise kept. They stack the grain in neat golden cones. Harvest art shaped by hunger and hope. Evenings turn crimson, and thick with the smell of smoke and bread. Children run between ovens and hayricks, carrying baskets, chasing fireflies. Old men sit near the well, trading stories of droughts survived, floods endured, harvests that came just in time. There's pride in those memories, not the pride of conquest, but of endurance. Come autumn, the rhythm slows again. The last gleaners move through stubble, picking what's left by hand. Flocks trail behind, feeding and fertilizing one last time before winter. The wheel turns always forward, always the same dot. And as the first cold breath of winter sweeps over the fields again, torches glow in cottage windows. Families gather inside with bread, cheese, cider, and stories. The land outside rests in silence, but beneath the frost, roots still hold memory, the knowledge that warmth will return, the same way it always has. That was the genius of medieval farming. No wasted motion, no forgotten lesson. Each season fed the next, each harvest wrote instructions for the future. It was balance carved into time, proof that prosperity isn't built on domination, but on rhythm. They didn't just live off the land, they lived with it, in step with a wisdom so simple it's almost sacred. By the deep of winter, the fields are bare but not dead. Snow lies smooth over furrows like a drawn breath. Beneath it, roots and worms keep working, unseen, steady as prayer. The farmers know better than to rush. Patience is part of the crop. In the cottages, they grind grain, mend baskets, carve handles for next year's tools. Every sound knife on wood, bellows in the hearth. A baby's cry is part of the same slow heartbeat that's kept the village alive for centuries. Come February, when the thaw begins, the river swells and mud returns underfoot. It's messy, glorious work time again. Teams gathered to clear the channels, patch fences, and ready the oxen. In the low sunlight, everything glows bronze, leather, water, hair. The blades of new plows gleaming like they remember their duty. The air smells of thawed earth and wet bark, and everyone breathes deeper, because life is back in motion. The mill creaks into full swing, water flashing silver under its turning wheel. You can hear the rhythm from half a mile away, a constant pulse of work and reward. Grain goes in, flour drifts out, and with it comes the faint sweetness of bread yet to be baked. A child leans on the miller's doorframe, face dusted white, watching history repeat itself, one rotation at a time. Out in the fields, compost piles, steam again, thick and alive. Ash from winter fires mixes with straw and dung, each forkful tossed like a spell over the waiting earth. Villagers laugh, curse, and shout as carts roll back and forth. It's dirty, exhausting, perfect work, the kind that feeds both stomach and soul. When the first shoots break through, they look fragile enough to crush under a fingertip, but they stand anyway. Thin spears against the cold, answering to no one but the sun. Barley, oats, beans, they rise together, green veins threading the brown world. Soon, the village paths fill with bees and dust, dogs barking at geese overhead. Everything feels temporary, yet eternal. Like a song you can hum but never finish. By midsummer, fields sway like oceans of gold. Men wade through them with scythes over their shoulders, sweat glinting under straw hats. Women tie sheaves with quick hands, voices rising and falling in rhythm. The air hums with life and labor, the sound of survival polished into music. Even the crows circle lazily unbothered, knowing the season's generosity will leave scraps for all. When the harvest is done, the animals return. Sheep wander the cut fields, trimming what's left. Pigs root for fallen grain. Cows lumber through, scattering dung that will feed the next cycle. Nothing is wasted. Even decay is currency. It's a perfect circle, soil to seed to mouth to soil again. As days shorten, fires light earlier. Inside, the air smells of bread and cider. Farmers sit by the hearths, boots off, fingers wrapped around wooden mugs. They talk of yield and weather, of who's getting married, of whose ox went lame. The talk isn't small, it's the stitching of memory into the fabric of life. Up in the monastery hills, monks still walk the cloisters with lanterns, checking their seed stores. Rows of jars glow amber in the flickering light. Peas, beans, barley, wheat, each labeled with a year and a prayer. Outside, frost creeps up the garden wall, but inside, the promise of spring sleeps, safe in clay, knowledge guarded in silence. Then the year ends the way it always does, with snow, with stillness, with faith. Smoke rises from every chimney, curling into the dim sky like a benediction. The wheel will turn again, the soil will wake, and the fields will open their arms. For now, there is rest and gratitude, and the steady knowing that the earth always remembers those who work with it, not against it. That was the secret, the one modern farming forgot. The land was never just dirt to be used. It was a partner, a teacher, and for hundreds of quiet years, people listened. They built a civilization not through conquest, but through cooperation. And even now, beneath the noise of machines and markets, that old rhythm still waits soft, patient, eternal just beneath our feet.